Members of the military are at risk of losing their careers, their livelihood, for behavior that is often not even a crime in the civilian system. That's why you need to know the facts. You need to know your options, and you need the help of experts when facing military justice.
Welcome to Military Justice. I'm your host, Jim Buchanan, and our guest today is Jonathan Crisp, who is an attorney specializing in military law at Crisp and Associates. We'll be talking today about sexual assault in the military. Jonathan, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. So let's dive right into it. Just exactly how big of an issue is sexual assault in the military?
It's huge. I don't think you can underestimate the impact that the changes that have recently occurred in the Manual for Courts Martial have had on both the prosecutions and the numbers that we're seeing today. And
then what would be the most prevalent sexual assault scenario? What's most common?
The most common by far is what I think most people refer to as a date rape scenario. It's what's being taught in sharp training, green dot training, things like that, that if an individual has a drink or one drink, they're not capable of consenting. And it's that scenario that is playing out all across installations across America and across the world, quite frankly.
And then when it comes to sexual assault education, what are some of the soldiers being taught, or what are some of the misconceptions about that, about the educational process?
The misconceptions are just what we talked about in terms of they are saying at these training sessions that if an individual has a drink of alcohol, then that person is incapable of consenting. Or any touching, no matter how it was intended, is a sexually offensive touching. And that's just not legally accurate, and oftentimes is not factually accurate. I think what they're trying to do is change behavior, and that's admirable. What is not effective and what is actually very harmful is how this method or how this message is being put out and how it's being used, particularly by law enforcement, and the effect it's having on accused and service members is incalculable.
So when is that education being introduced to the military member,
Sure.
and why is it important?
It was congressionally mandated. So about 5 to 7 years ago, a lot of changes were mandated because of the heightened awareness of sexual assault. There were certain senators that felt that it was rampant in the military, and I would disagree with the degree to which they felt that was occurring. But they required this training to take place at least once a year, and in some units twice a year. And everyone's brought together as a unit and taught by a layman as to what the definitions of sexual assault, what's the definition of sexual harassment, and things of that nature.
Well, on that, then, what is it that you would like to have soldiers to know?
Just because it's being said at a sharp briefing or a green dot training or things like that is not necessarily accurate. For example, if an individual is accused of a crime like sexual assault and CID or OSI or NCIS comes in and says, hey, let me give you this scenario based on your training, wouldn't you agree then that that's sexual assault? So you're duping these service members into thinking that just because somebody said it at a training, that's what the law is, and that's oftentimes not accurate. The biggest problem I've always had, particularly with law enforcement, is that they're encouraged to lie, they're told they can lie to an accused, and they often do, just to get someone to admit. For example, we've had cases, and the most recently was at Fort Polk about 3 weeks ago, where an individual through CID was told, hey, how would you equate this to your sharp training? And that individual said, well, if I'm basing it on my sharp training, this will be sex assault. So then that's how they were able to, quote, garner a confession out of my client. And in fact, that was wrong.
So obviously, I could tell you have some passion about this. What are some of the motivating factors in this issue for you?
Some of the biggest motivating factors for me are the consequences that service members face and the misconceptions that are out there. I think what people don't understand is when you're dealing with sex assault, on its face it has the idea to be sort of a scarlet letter. What they're missing is the context of these interactions, so not everything happens in a vacuum. The fact that somebody may have had a drink doesn't mean they're incapable of consenting, doesn't mean, and if a person is blacked out, we throw these terms around now, like blackout and passout, as if they're synonymous, and they are nothing like each other. So if a person is blackout drunk, that does not mean they can't consent. If a person has had a drink, it does not mean they can't consent. In fact, they can, and very often do. The interactions we have in society are no different. And I think what we need people to understand is that these allegations can be life-altering, and if an individual is convicted of them, even more so.
Yeah, and that's the repercussions of the situation of sexual assault. I mean, that's got to be devastating.
The degree to which it can change an individual's life is, again, it's not something I can underestimate or understate, excuse me. What you're looking at is a dishonorable discharge if you are convicted of a Article 120 offense, and you're looking at likely lifetime sex offender registration. And it depends on the state, obviously, that you're going to be in ultimately, but at a minimum, you're going to have a period of sex offender registration for an extensive period of time, which, in my opinion, outweighs any other potential consequences.
And of those, what would you consider to be the most concerning?
Just that. The fact that nobody wants to go to jail. Nobody wants to spend a day in jail. If you are convicted of an offense like this, oftentimes people will say, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to have to, worry about what jail would be like. And I understand that. Nobody does. But jail will end. Registration often does not.
Valuable information, Jonathan. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
That's all the time that we have today for this topic. Thanks for watching Military Justice. If you're interested to learn more, go to mymilitarylawyers.com, mymilitarylawyers.com. Remember, you need to know the facts, you need to know your options, and you need the help of experts in facing military justice.